Emma had been feeling suffocated in her marriage with Tom for months. The routine, the predictable life, and the constant nagging weight of their relationship had started to wear her down. That's when she met Damien. He was everything Tom wasn't: spontaneous, charming, and unapologetically confident. From the moment they met, there was an undeniable connection, and it didn't take long before they started an affair. At first, Emma thought it was just a way to escape, a momentary indulgence in something new and exciting. But as time went on, her feelings for Damien deepened. She couldn't deny the pull he had on her, nor could she ignore the fact that her marriage with Tom had become something of a burden. One evening, Emma made a decision that she would never take back. With trembling hands and a conflicted heart, she invited Damien over to her house. She had to face Tom. She had to tell him everything. Sitting in the living room, Emma nervously blurted it out. "I've been seeing someone else, Tom. Damien. And he wants us both. He wants you to share me. No escape." Tom froze. The words didn't register immediately. Was she joking? How could this be happening? He tried to laugh it off, but the seriousness in Emma's eyes told him this was no joke. As Damien walked into the room, the tension became suffocating. He was calm, almost too calm, as if he had already won. He greeted Tom with a slow, knowing smile, and Emma could only stand there, silently watching the exchange between the two men she had once held so dear. Tom was torn between fury and disbelief. The man standing before him was everything he wasn't, and that was part of the problem. Damien's presence filled the room, suffusing it with an undeniable energy that made Tom feel small and powerless. Emma watched the two of them exchange glances, a silent battle of wills, and in that moment, she realized how far things had gone. Damien wasn't just a man in her life, he was a force. And now, she was stuck in the middle, forced to face the consequences of her actions. Tom's heart raced with betrayal. He couldn't believe this was his life. His wife, the woman he loved, was telling him that another man wanted to take what was his. But the worst part? She wasn't saying no. She was accepting it. She was choosing Damien. As the night unfolded, there were no easy answers, only shattered trust and broken hearts. Emma's confession and Damien's chilling presence tore apart everything they had. The house that was once a home now felt cold and distant. Tom knew, deep down, that he couldn't unhear those words. There was no going back. The room fell silent after Damien's calm entrance. Emma's confession echoed in the air like a slap across Tom's face. He stood frozen, unable to process what he had just heard. His world, which had once been so secure, was now shattering before him. She didn't just cheat on him, Emma had invited the very man who had stolen her heart into their home, into the place where they had built their life together. And what was worse, she wasn't even sorry. She was eager. Tom turned his gaze toward Emma, his expression twisted in disbelief. "Is this really happening?" he asked, his voice shaky but full of anger. Emma's lips trembled. This wasn't the way she had imagined this moment. She thought she could handle it, thought she could face Tom's wrath and get over the guilt. But seeing him like this, crushed and lost, made her question everything. Yet, despite the guilt gnawing at her insides, she couldn't help the pull of Damien's presence. His dark, magnetic energy seemed to fill every corner of the room. I didn't want this, Tom," she said softly, though her words felt hollow even to her own ears. "But Damien, he's different. I couldn't stop." Tom's chest tightened, his heart racing as he stared at her. "You couldn't stop? You've been lying to me for months, Emma. All this time, and I had no idea. You've been sleeping with him, behind my back, and now you want me to share you with him?" His voice cracked, the hurt and betrayal impossible to mask. Emma opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She wanted to explain, wanted to make him understand, but she knew there was no excuse, no way to take back what she had done. She had crossed a line, and now there was no going back. Damien stepped forward, his presence almost overwhelming in the room. His cold, Knowing eyes never left Tom's as he slowly, almost theatrically, reached out and placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. He was claiming her in front of Tom, showing him that there was nothing Tom could do. He was in control. "She's mine now, Tom," Damien said in a low, almost mocking voice. "You had your chance, but now she belongs to me. And you can either accept it, or you can leave." Tom's blood boiled at the sound of those words. Who was this man to come into his life and demand everything? To take what was his? The anger bubbled up, and for a brief moment, he considered lunging at Damien, throwing the man out of his home. But something held him back, a feeling of helplessness, of defeat. It was as if the very air around them had shifted, and he couldn't breathe. Emma stood there, trapped between them, unable to move, as Damien's words hung in the air like a noose tightening around her conscience. The weight of it all was suffocating. She had chosen Damien, but seeing Tom in pain, seeing his eyes filled with heartbreak, made her feel sick to her stomach. But in that moment, she also realized the truth. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. There was no escaping Damien's hold on her. He had captivated her in ways she couldn't explain. And she didn't know if she wanted to escape. "Tom," Emma whispered, her voice barely a breath. "I never meant to hurt you. But Damien, he's everything you weren't. He made me feel alive again." Tom looked at her, his face twisted in pain. "Alive again? What does that even mean, Emma? What happened to the woman I married?" She looked away, unable to answer. The truth was, she didn't know. Somewhere along the way, she had lost herself, and now she was tangled in a mess of emotions, a web spun by Damien's charm and her own weakness. Damien gave a soft laugh, a sound that sent a chill down Tom's spine. "You see, Tom, the problem isn't just your wife. It's you. You couldn't keep her happy, couldn't keep her on the edge, couldn't make her feel like she mattered. And now, I'm here. I'm the one who gets to have her." His tone was cold, calculating, and yet strangely calm. It was clear he had no remorse. Tom's fists clenched at his sides, but he remained still, paralyzed by the overwhelming feelings that flooded him. He wanted to scream, to lash out, but he knew it wouldn't matter. The damage had been done. Emma had already made her choice. With a deep, shaky breath, Tom turned away. "I don't know if I can do this, Emma. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't even know if I want to." As he walked toward the door, he heard Emma call his name, but it was too late. The last sliver of their relationship had been shattered beyond repair. In the days that followed, the reality of Emma's decision set in. Tom had left. He packed his things, said nothing more than a few cold words, and walked out of the door they had once shared. Damien stayed, of course. He had gotten what he wanted. He was now in control of everything. But as the days dragged on, Emma began to realize that the excitement she had felt in the beginning had faded. What had once been thrilling was now turning into something she couldn't escape. Damien's possessive nature began to show more and more. The man she had fallen for wasn't the charming, charismatic lover she had imagined. He was possessive, demanding, and cold. The power he had over her grew every day, and soon, Emma found herself feeling trapped, the same suffocating feeling she had once experienced in her marriage, only now there was no one to blame but herself. After Tom's departure, the house felt emptier than Emma had ever imagined. The silence was suffocating, and the weight of what she had done pressed down on her chest every minute. Damien, who had once seemed like the answer to all her problems, was now nothing more than a shadow looming over her. The man who had seemed so charming and irresistible was turning out to be a far darker presence than she had anticipated. At first, Damien had been attentive, showering her with affection, as he always did in the early days of their relationship. He would send her sweet messages, whispering that she was everything he ever wanted. But as the days passed, his behavior began to shift. The texts became less affectionate, more possessive. His calls grew frequent, demanding, and sometimes even threatening. The man who once made her feel desired now made her feel controlled, like a prisoner in her own home. One evening, Emma sat in the living room, staring at the empty space where Tom's things had once been. She had spent so many years with Tom, building a life together. And now, with Damien's presence filling the void, she realized how hollow everything felt. Damien entered the room without a word, his eyes cold and calculating. He didn't need to say much, his presence alone commanded attention. He walked up to Emma and sat next to her, his arm casually draping over her shoulder. She stiffened at the touch, a sensation she had once craved but now dreaded. "You're mine now, Emma," Damien said, his voice low and possessive. "There's no going back. You made your choice." Emma didn't respond immediately. She couldn't. The reality of it was sinking in, and it felt like she was suffocating again, just like she had with Tom. Only this time, it wasn't just her marriage at risk, it was her freedom, her autonomy, her sense of self. The guilt never left. It gnawed at her every day, reminding her of the devastation she had caused. The night she had brought Damien into their home and told Tom the truth was a night she would never forget. But now, as Damien's demands grew stronger, she realized that her actions had set her on a path she couldn't undo. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of Damien's control only deepened. Emma began to feel the emotional distance between them, but not in the way she expected. It wasn't the absence of passion, it was the absence of choice. She no longer felt like an equal partner in this twisted arrangement. She felt owned, a piece of property, a thing to be controlled. One afternoon, Emma received a message from Tom. It had been weeks since they had spoken, and she had no idea what to expect. She opened the message, her hands trembling. "I'm sorry, Emma. I wish things had turned out differently. But I can't go back to you. Not after what happened. I thought we had something real, but I was wrong." The words hit her like a slap. She had lost him forever. And as much as she tried to tell herself that she had made the right choice by being with Damien, a part of her deep down knew that she had lost everything that had ever mattered to her. She had ruined her marriage for the fleeting thrill of something new, and now she was paying the price. That night, Damien came home later than usual. He was different now, his gaze harder, his demeanor more detached. Emma sat on the couch, staring at him with a mixture of fear and regret. She didn't know what to say anymore. Damien walked into the living room and sat across from her, his eyes never leaving hers. There was something cold about his smile, something predatory. "I know what you're thinking, Emma," he said, his voice smooth. "You think you can still go back to him. But let me remind you, you made your choice. There's no way out of this." Emma's heart dropped. There was no escape. Not from him, not from the consequences of her own actions. The air between them thickened, and for the first time, Emma truly understood the weight of what she had done. She had walked away from everything that had once made her feel safe, her marriage, her trust in herself, and now, she was stuck. Stuck in a relationship where she had no power, no voice. As weeks dragged on, Emma began to feel the weight of her decisions in ways she hadn't anticipated. Damien's control over her grew stronger, more suffocating. She no longer recognized herself. The woman who had once been free-spirited, full of dreams and hope, now felt like a shadow of her former self. One night, as Damien was away on business, Emma sat alone in the dimly lit living room. She thought about Tom. Thought about how, despite everything, she still missed him, his kindness, his unwavering loyalty. The life they could have had was now an unreachable dream. She reached for her phone and scrolled through old messages. There it was, Tom's last message to her. "I thought we had something real." She read those words again and again, feeling the pain of her loss wash over her like a tidal wave. In that moment, something inside Emma snapped. She couldn't live like this anymore. She couldn't live under Damien's thumb, feeling trapped and empty. The next morning, as Damien returned from his trip, Emma packed her things in silence. She didn't confront him, didn't try to explain. She just left. The house that had once been filled with laughter and love now felt like a cage, and she was finally setting herself free. When Damien returned home and found the note she left behind, he was furious. But there was nothing he could do. Emma was gone. She had left the life she had built with him, and as she walked away from everything she once knew, she finally realized the depth of her mistakes. Years later, Emma would look back on that time in her life with regret and sorrow. She had lost everything: her marriage, her self-respect, and her sense of who she was. Damien, the man she had thought would give her freedom, had only made her feel more confined. She never heard from Tom again. He had moved on, found happiness without her. And Emma? She was still learning to rebuild, still haunted by the choice she made that night. She had learned the hardest lesson of all: some choices can never be undone.